Hello, and welcome back to the pricing channel for small businesses. In our previous two videos, we first introduced the concept of markdown pricing as a strategy for maximizing profitability, and then illustrated the application of this strategy using a fashion industry example. For this last video in the series, we will look at two more examples of applying this strategy using products that have a much longer product lifetime than most fashion items. By taking into account the useful market-based life of a product, we will illustrate that a successful markdown process can indeed be implemented much as we did with the fashion example. So let's go ahead and take a look at how all of this works. When we're looking to apply the markdown pricing strategy to products or services, one of the things we have to be aware of is what is the product life cycle of the product or service we're looking at. And this life cycle is defined as the time from which a product or service is introduced into the market to when it might be withdrawn. And so there's some things that we can say about the product life cycle of various products and services. And the first is that some of these products or services have short life cycles. Fashions, seasonal foods, automobiles can have a product life cycle of about a year or even less. Other products can have a life cycle of 1 to 3 years and even more. And products like electronics, specialty foods, and some apps fall into this category. And then there are those products and services that can have very long life cycles, 5 years and many more than that. And so items like tools, appliances, staple foods, clothing, some apps fall into this category. In fact, the product Coca-Cola was created in 1866. And although it has been changed and improved as a product, it is still in the marketplace today. When we look at short life cycle products, there are some specific things we can say about these. And we've talked about this before, but we'll just review it here today. Supply is constrained, usually. Only so many fashion units are produced. There's limited automobile production and limited seasonal foods, etc., etc. These products tend to be economically perishable. And in that sense, fashions lose appeal, vehicles lose appeal, foods may have limited shelf life, and of course snow chains tend to be worthless in the summertime. Customers' willingness to pay must not increase over time because there are some things that become more valuable with age, and we've talked about that, art, wine, houses. And so the product must decrease in desirability in order for the markdown pricing strategy to be aligned with the economic perishability of the product or service. In this situation, customers face a dilemma. Do they buy a product or a service that's attractive to them now at a higher price? Or do they wait for the price to drop and possibly face a stock out scenario? So this creates an urgency on the customer's part to maybe buy sooner rather than later. And we gave an example of this strategy in the first video of this series from the fashion industry. For medium life cycle products, things change a little bit. Supply is not always constrained. Only so many units may be planned for production, but production can be flexible and it can be expanded to meet unexpected demand over the 1 to 3 or so life cycle time of the product. The products are semi-perishable. They may not be totally economically perishable on their own, but they may be replaced by new and better products and maybe even self-cannibalized by the original producing company. Certainly a good example of this is Apple and the iPhones. iPhones have a 1 to 2, 3-year product life, and then they are cannibalized by Apple with the next innovative model. Customers' willingness, again, must not increase over time for the same reason we talked about last time. The products must decrease in desirability to support the markdown strategy. Now, in this situation, customers tend to face a lower chance of a stock out. They assume that when they decide to buy, the product or service will be there, and so there's often less urgency involved in getting the product if they really desire it that much. So let's take a look at an example of a product that's going to have a 2-year product life. It's a 2022 cordless vacuum. It's the latest thing on the market, lighter weight, longer battery life, all that kind of good stuff. There is 75,000 units planned for production in year 1 of the product, and then 200,000 units in year 2 of the product. And so our markdown pricing strategy is going to be an introduction in November of year 1 with an initial price of $139 per unit to target early adopters. And we believe through market research that there will be about 75,000 early adopters in the marketplace. Starting September of year 2, the product will be marked down to $89 per unit in order to target the value-driven segment of the marketplace. And market research teaches us that there's about 200,000 value-driven marketers in the marketplace. A new product or a new model is going to be introduced in November of year 3, and at that point, this product will be discontinued. However, independent refurbished units sold on Amazon and elsewhere will be priced at $59 to target the price-driven portion of the market. And we note here that these are sold by independent refurbishment outfits, not by the original manufacturer. And another note is that the variable production cost for the unit is $59 per unit delivered to the port of Los Angeles. So given this information, let's see how various pricing strategies affect the profitability of this product. And so we have basically 3 pricing strategies listed here. One option would be to introduce the product at $139 per unit to target the early adopters and then hold that price constant. And once the 75,000 units have been sold out, then that's the end of the run for the product. And under ideal circumstances, the total gross profit by targeting the early adopters would be $6 million. And that would be the final gross profit for the product as a whole, because we wouldn't produce any more units and there would be no one else to buy the product in either the value-driven or the price-driven segment. Now, another pricing strategy would be to actually introduce the product and then price it at a constant $89 per unit. If we do this, there'll be $3 million of gross profit generated from the early adopter segment. That's 75,000 units times $89 instead of $139. The value-driven segment would generate $6 million in gross profit, and so then the total gross profit over the 2 years into 2 segments would be $9 million. The third strategy is the markdown strategy. The product is initially marketed to the early adopters at $139 per unit. In the second year, the price drops to $89 per unit. And the total gross profit over both segments is $12 million. Now, of course, each price markdown reduces the profit per unit, but the sequential markdown strategy allows us to harvest sales from each segment at the maximum profitability available for each segment. And so the end result is a maximization of profits over all the segments that we participate in. Long life cycle products can be even a little bit different than the medium life cycle products. Supply is not constrained. Production is planned to meet forecasted demand over the years that the product will be in the market, so as to minimize variable costs. Products are not particularly perishable, and they typically have long useful lives as well as long economic lives. Customers' willingness to pay again must not increase over time so that the product desirability is pretty steady but flexible enough to support the markdown strategy. As products age in this product category, this long life product category, oftentimes promotions or special sales are required in order to maintain demand, especially as time increases. So let's take a look at another example. In this case, it's a do-it-yourself home security system that has a targeted production of 80,000 units in the first year and then 200,000 units per year over the next 3 years. That's year 2, 3, and 4. And the markdown strategy that will be used here is that the product will be introduced in November of the first year at $239 per unit to target the value-driven, security-conscious homeowners. Actually, that should be the early adopters. My mistake. Okay. And then in the second, third, and fourth years, we'll start to use targeted promotions, which would be 25% off list price in this case, in order to build demand for the product in those out years. And we estimate then that 75% of the sales will be at the promoted price to target the value-driven and price-driven customers, and 25% of the sales will be at the list price in order to capture any early adopters that come into the market each year as they buy new homes or build new homes, that type of thing. Okay? A new model is going to be introduced in the 5th year in November, and the current model will be discontinued. Now, we're assuming in this case that this type of product is probably not attractive for the refurbished market. And that's because once somebody installs a security system, they're probably not going to rip it out and then take it back to a retailer or a refurbisher to get a little bit of money, and then that refurbisher is going to put it on the market. Now, once these products are sold, they're probably used until they fail, and then once they fail, they're discarded and a new product is installed. We're assuming that the variable production cost for this product will be $79 per unit delivered to the Port of Los Angeles. So let's take a look at how the profitability might work for this type of product over these 4 years using this markdown pricing strategy. And so what we see here is we'll introduce the product in year 1 priced at $239 in order to target the early adopters, and it will generate $12.8 million in gross profit. In years 2, 3, and 4, 25% of the sales will be at $239,000. That's 50,000 units sold per year at $239, and that will generate $8 million a year over year 2, 3, and 4 for a total of $24 million in gross profit. 75% of the sales should be at $179 per unit for years 2, 3, and 4, over 150,000 customers per year, should generate $15 million in gross profit per year for a total of $45 million over the 3 years. And so this number in the first year, plus this number in year 2, 3, and 4, plus this number in years 2, 3, and 4, will generate a grand total of $81,800,000 in gross profit. Now, if the price was held at $239 for 4 years, we know the profits would be gross profit would be at least $12.8 million, as we got the early adopters in the first year. There will be additional early adopters in the subsequent years as more people come into the market. And so the gross profit would be more than $12.8 million over those 4 years, but we really don't know how much it would be and how much greater than 12.8 it would be. But we do know that sequential markdown pricing allows us to harvest the sales from each segment at the maximum profitability, and should generate somewhere in the neighborhood of $81.8 million. Notice that there are no sales indicated in the price-driven segment, which is a result of the fact that we said the refurbished market probably wasn't an area that this product would be appropriate for, and we had no pricing strategy to reduce the units below $179 to try and target a price-driven segment. The end result of the markdown pricing strategy is that we maximize the profits over all the segments, which in this case is early adopters and value driven, compared to a constant pricing strategy.
As you can see from the presentation, even products with multi-year lives can use all of the basics we've discussed to this point. Things like customer segmentation based on willingness to pay, use of cumulative sales data to decide when to mark down prices, and using product innovation as a way to make one product obsolete as we're working to introduce newer and better products to the market to start the whole process over again. So how do you go about determining if you have a product to use this strategy on? Well, first of all, review the criteria that we talked about in the first video of this series. And then determine what the product life should be. And then think about the proper price points to target early adopters, value-driven buyers, and the price-driven buyers. And then you can run a simulation of the process, as we have done here, and see if the markdown process delivers better profitability than any fixed price strategy you might choose. And please, let us know if there are any other pricing topics you might be interested in. And before you leave, don't forget to hit that subscribe button down there so that you don't miss a single video. And as always, we look forward to seeing you again.